Hi, I'm Will Adams, and this is Honey Brook Tools and Woodworks. This is the second in a two-part series of videos on the Honey Brook Birdcage Awl. If you haven't watched the first part, I would recommend that you go back and take a look at that now. In that video, I turned the handle out of this piece of really nice bird's eye maple. I turned it, I installed the ferrule, applied shellac, and now we're at the point where it's ready to receive the birdcage awl blade and the little brass decorative piece that I put in all of my handles on the end. So I'm going to move the camera around, move it in a little bit closer so you can see my hands at work, and we'll finish up this tool. Be right back. Okay, so the first thing that I'll do is install the little brass decorative inlay on the end of the handle. And I think you can see I've marked the center of the end of the handle, and I do that based on what I see from how I've parted it off the lathe. There's usually a little remnant that shows me what center is, and then I just by eye go in and start a hole with this little scratch awl, and then I will go into the vise and drill the hole for it. Just piece of cotton cloth and some leather just to protect it a little bit. It doesn't need to be cinched down very hard. Okay, and then whoops, I've got this, I believe it's 1/8 inch, yeah, 1/8 inch brass rod. And I just clip off a little piece. And that'll do. Out of the vise. And I put some very thin CA glue into that hole, just a little bit. And then you can just drive that home. Okay, so now that that's in, I'll take a metal file. I will file that down and then clean up this end. So I'll do a little bit of that right here. So once I have the brass filed down flush with the end of the handle, I take this little wood file and just kind of smooth out any imperfections that are there from using the metal file. I try to be pretty careful not to make any more work for myself than I need to. So that feels pretty good. I will now hit it with some 600 grit abrasive paper. And Scotch-Brite. And then finally, some 4/0 steel wool. Obviously, I'll need to apply some shellac to the end of this. I usually go over the handle once with the whole handle with some shellac. Anyway, just because I want to make sure that it's got a nice coat on it before I send it out to a customer. So now we are ready to install the birdcage awl blade. I'm going to bring this right back over here. And get rid of some stuff that I don't need on the bench. Okay, so I'm going to show you when I get the blades. This is one of my scratch awl blades, and I'll do a video on these later. I actually make two sizes of scratch awls. There's this, which is, let's see, about 4 1/4. So once, excuse me, once installed, about 3 1/4 inches long. So that's the larger of the two scratch awl blades. And then I make one with these small blades, like this. This is one of the first ones I made. So my point in telling you that is when I get these large scratch awl blades, they come with this residue that's, I believe, an artifact of the heat treating process. But I need to clean that up because I don't like the way it looks going out. So I just hit it with some abrasive paper. Sometimes I'll chuck this up in the cordless drill and just spin it and do my thing. Start out with like 240 and then go up through, I don't know, about 600. Anyway, so you'll see on the flats, there's still some remnants of that from the heat treating, but I'll clean that up as well before this goes out. I've also taken it over to the bench grinder and ground some grooves in the end of this. This is just to give the epoxy a little bit of something to grab onto when I install it. It's a pretty tight fit, but it works pretty well. So I need to mix up some epoxy and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've mixed up a little bit of 5-minute epoxy. I just used the end of the birdcage awl blade to stir it up. And then I've got the handle protected with a little shop towel, just so I don't get any epoxy on that. I start it by hand and got this little piece of scrap brass. You can hear when it hits bottom. So I'll now clean that up. Okay, so I'm going to give that a little bit of time to set up, and then I'm going to clean off this the artifacts of the heat treating process and stamp my maker's mark in it and touch it up with a little bit of shellac. let the shellac cure, and then it'll be time for some wax. So I'm going to set this aside for a little while, and then I'll come back. Okay, so I am ready to stamp my maker's mark on this birdcage awl. I have I've cleaned up the blade, so all the remnants of the heat treating process are gone. So, and I've cleaned up the end of this. I've end of the handle. I've put some shellac on it. Now I just need to stamp my maker's mark. I will clean up this brass and give it one final inspection, and then it'll be ready to go. So I have this really high-tech system. I have an old hand screw that I just, I take my handle and I secure it that way. This just gives me a little bit of stability while I stamp this on the handle. So this, it's just a metal hand stamp. So I just come on over here, make sure I've got it going in the right direction. And that's that. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit and take some final photos of it that I'll post at the end of this video. So I'm going to clean it up and I'll be right back. So I just take a little bit of 4/0 steel wool to polish up this brass so it looks good on the way out the door. And one thing I don't know if is picked up on the turning part of my video, but you may see at the edge, I put a little chamfer on the edge of that. I just think it, from an aesthetic standpoint, I think it just looks nicer to have that little detail there. And you might have also noticed while I'm turning the handle, I'm constantly checking this little seam right here, because if there's much of not a gap, but if there's any discrepancy between the wood and the ferrule, the user will feel it, and I don't want that, because that I just don't think it feels right in the hand if you've got that little discrepancy. So I think that's me done. I will probably let this shellac sit. I'm not totally convinced that I'm satisfied with the end of this, so I might put another coat of shellac on the end. The end is the end grain is sometimes a little bit tricky to get where I want it to be. But so that's the Honey Brook Birdcage Awl. This particular one is in Bird's Eye Maple. I want to thank everybody that has left a comment on my previous videos. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the support, and I love being able to talk with people, well, virtually. So if you like this video, please click like. If you haven't already, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. If you have a question or a comment, please leave it down below. Thanks for watching.